tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com. Click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. Now, about those classes. When are they, you might ask? We're going to schedule some more coming up for you. Sorry we don't have any right now, but we will get that shortly. Stand by and we'll get some to you soon. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. Tonight, we got a special guy named Gavin who has some cylinder head stuff he's developed that appears to be a big deal. Some big flow numbers and a lot of power going to come out of these things. We also have a little bit of talk maybe with fueling and some gripes about some X275 rules, and third Bonneville's coming up. So for those of you who are wondering about that kind of racing, maybe we'll give you a little bit of hint about that stuff too, and we'll have a lot of fun tonight. We're sorry about the little delay. Sit back and relax. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. And as usual, we have our normal panel of hosts. Bill Fowler of Big Hat Racing. Brian Barnhill of TunerTools.com. John Bewley of Little John's Motorsport Solutions. Mark Dalquist of Throttles Performance. Scott Evans of EX Tuning. Tom Sewell of Fuel Injector Development. Blake Hughes of 417 Motorsports. Scott Clark of RealTuners.com. And possibly a few of our previous guest hosts will pop their heads in and chat as well. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and let's get this show on the road. Welcome back. Sorry about the delay. We had some issues. Something Area 51 related. I'm sure it has to be something like that. But we're back. We're here. We're going to take care of it. Welcome back, everybody.
Russia fired the EMP. It's the audio still jacked. I don't know. Evan's got us muted where he can't hear us.
No, you're on.
Oh, okay.
YouTube is the same way. You can understand it, but it sounds like you're talking underwater.
Gotcha. Yep. So, Facebook any better?
No, it is not.
No.
Okay, so something from Restream. There we go. I guess Mixler only. Mixler only.
I buy the app Mixler only tonight. Everybody go on Mixler.com/RealTuners.
I think
Here, I'll put a link. Hold on.
the guys are saying the Mixler stream sounds bad
The
too.
mixer stream is jacked too. I just checked it.
Oh, even worse. My Mixler stream was working.
Interesting.
Evan, I'm just going to have to show you how audio works.
Sure. So, what does it sound like is the question?
It sounds like they're kind of like breathing underwater, like when a scuba diver tries to talk.
Are you restreaming?
That's the same shit I was hearing from the beginning, though.
Yeah.
So are you restreaming through Scott's computer, Evans, or through yours?
No, let me see if I can listen to it once and try to find out what's going on. I'll go try to hear if you guys keep chit-chatting.
I say, I've been recording this whole time. I say we go ahead and have a show without the audience and record it and then release it.
So we're going to have to post that on all the various places, just letting people know that we're doing that. Just so people aren't constantly trying to pull in and hear the
We'll just miss out on all the hilarious comments from all our great listeners.
Yeah, the interaction with the audience like makes that.
That's what makes the show.
I would just do it again tomorrow night or something.
Otherwise, by the time we're a few days into it, we'll all be on F that.
That might make for a good show. Somebody posted on the Facebook feed that Donald Long hacked our equipment to keep us from having a show tonight.
Probably Jerry.
Oh, you're going to jail for that.
You're going to have to edit that shit out.
You're going to hell for that. I don't even know. Pretty sure hell came to me.
It's their feed.
Using potatoes instead of microphones tonight. Coming to you live from the Cabela's fish tank.
Okay, everybody take a drink.
You're a little late for that, Joe. Oh my God.
Excuse me. Take another drink.
Fixed.
You can always try hitting it.
Says it's fixed. Somebody said it's fixed. Mixler.
It's fixed.
So we're going to do a show for the Mixler folks.
It's fixed?
So, somebody smacked it with their purse.
What's all the clanking and banging?
It's not me this time.
Oh my
That'd be the Ford hammer.
No more McDonald's Wi-Fi.
All right, we're good to go now. Looks like we've got everything situated. And
Is that true on Facebook can hear us now?
yeah, Facebook can hear us now.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying it's good.
Yep,
Are
fixed.
you kidding? It is on the maker's fault. My bad. Evans, you're going to have to just take over now because
So do I get to read everybody the cliff notes from earlier today when we were saying how much unreliable Scott Evans' setup was and everything crashes and blah 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 blah.
Oh wow. Oh, between that and the comment Keith Cromer just put up about somebody slipping the audio engineer at Texas Roadhouse gift card, I'm dying. Oh my God!
You know, I ain't gonna lie. I lived in Texas for almost 4 years. Never went to Texas Roadhouse.
Well, you didn't miss anything.
Oh, is it not good?
Because that's like one of those. That's the reason why the same people in Florida don't go to Red Lobster. Okay,
Okay, got it.
it's
You might go up there and rib and shit.
Yeah. Whoever David is calling on from the phone, you've got a lot of background noise going on right now.
I do.
Oh, I think that's who it's coming from. I can't really tell though. We'll see.
So we're going to start this over now officially, or what are we going to do?
I don't know. Somebody just make an announcement that we're officially on the air or something. One of you important people.
Right.
How about I turn off my air
We're officially
conditioner?
on the air.
Did it get better?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have them. Never mind.
Welcome back, folks. We're officially on the air.
All right. Now we can have a show.
Only 45 minutes late.
You hush with your semantics.
You guys are troopers for hanging with us for 45 minutes while we had like at least a fist's worth of audio problems.
Well, they just know that now by the end of the show, most of you guys are going to be toasted.
End of the show, hell, we're already there. What are you talking about?
Right now, man.
It's better for
We
honesty.
had 45 minutes to be drinking already.
I've had the recorder going this whole 45 minutes. I'm really going to have to edit some of that out. Holy crap.
Yeah, there's going to be a great behind-the-scenes sub episode that's going to come out a couple of days later that you guys are just going to love.
We really should start doing a B-roll of every episode and some of the after show talks.
Yeah,
some of the after show recordings I've got are going to be great extortion tapes later.
Maybe that's what we should do for the 100th episode is play a few of those clips.
RealTuners Radio does not endorse extortion, blackmail, or other forms of legally questionable activities based on illegally made recordings.
Thank you, Mr.
Scott,
Lawyer.
Scott, it says you sound muffled.
That just took all the fun out of it, didn't it?
I probably am muffled.
Mueller is going to investigate us.
Right?
It's all right. He won't remember the investigation. We're good.
Amen. Amen. I can't speak to that. Please read my
Scott
report.
say we need to not have any more lawsuits when we started all this tonight?
That is not that was not within my purview.
Actually, he just said we needed to not have him sued by Precision. Everything else is fine,
enough,
right?
That's enough. Move along. Change the subject.
All right. So tonight we've got a myriad of topics we can cover and we can start with. But let's start off with my buddy Gavin Simcoe. We've got him here with us, the brainchild that is SPS Cylinder Heads out of Washington State. And Gavin has, man, who's got the background noise going on? Gavin, dude, that's you.
That may or may not be my wife fucking up her mac and cheese.
No, I'm making.
What the hell?
Oh, shit. Oh, wow.
Do I need to move rooms?
Yeah, for the time being, it might be a good idea if she's going to continue to fuck up her mac and cheese.
Yeah, at this point, for calling her out over the air, you might as well just go to the doghouse directly.
Yeah, you
I
might
didn't
wanna
realize
get
it took a hammer and a chisel to eat mac and cheese.
Hey, I mean, I'm just saying it might not be the first time. She made me pizza rolls once, and she read the directions and got the oven and the microwave ones mixed up. So she put my pizza rolls in the microwave for about as long as you needed to in the oven.
Oh my goodness!
So later that night, I was like, "Hey, where are those pizza rolls at?" And she was like, "Oh, they're still in the oven or still in the microwave." I was like, "What?"
Jake Hildebrandt, Duck is now outlawed restreams.
Right?
We didn't pay our 30% fee.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
No more background noise?
Hey, yeah, it's actually halfway quiet now. She's not banging on pans with wooden spoons.
Nope, not yet.
So, let me try this again here. So tonight, to start with, we've got Gavin Simcoe with us from SPS Cylinder Heads out of Kent, Washington. Gavin, full-time cylinder head guy, port development guy. He's been working the last month or so with the new BR3 casting from Brodix, and he has developed a port that, in my opinion, is kind of going to turn the LS world kind of on its ear a little bit. Gavin, why don't you go ahead and lead in and tell us about what you've got going on with that new BR3 240 and BR3 250?
All right. Well, we start off with a Brodix casting. A lot of people kind of get mixed up between have our own program versus other people, and a lot of people come off thinking that we buy this port or this ported head from Brodix and that we just rework it, and that's not what we're doing here. So when you call Brodix as a cylinder head porter, you can buy these castings that are what they call a porter's casting. The guides and seats are installed, but they're not honed, they're not cut, there's no port. I mean, it's a pretty small hole to start with. So instead of manipulating an already existing port, we're literally starting from scratch. So that's how we're able to get a smaller runner than what Brodix has to offer, and a lot of other people out there that offer the same casting. So we're designing a LS3 port off this casting that isn't really like your traditional LS3. Same valve location, sparkle location, and whatnot, but it's not really much of a rectangular port anymore. It's more of an oval. I wouldn't say it's straight oval. You can definitely tell it's an LS3 style head, but not really square port. So that was one of the first things we were able to do to manipulate the port shape as well, as far as like the actual shape being oval, as far as the direction where the port was going to go. So we did that. We have a 240cc intake small version that uses a 2-inch 125 intake valve. At 400 CFM, we're able to achieve 290 CFM. Or I'm sorry, at 400 lift, we're able to achieve 297 CFM. And at 650 lift, we saw 375. It's pretty similar as far as flow numbers go to our Haymaker head. That's an 11-degree head, whereas this is a 15-degree head, and we see, I think it was about 15 CFM more at that 400 lift. So for hydraulic roller engines, that's a pretty significant gain.
Have you measured velocity gradients throughout the port, like in the corners, in the middles, tops, and bottom?
I haven't got into that just yet. I don't actually have my own flow bench yet. I've been kind of outsourcing the flow bench to another company nearby. That way we don't get any kind of like, oh, you manipulating the bench, how much pressure was it actually seeing, yada, 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 because we've heard that, throughout the years too. But they do have some probes there. I need to probably drop out. Once I get a spare head, I'm actually working on a set of customers right now. So once I actually get a spare head, then I'll have a little bit more time to play with it and see exactly what we're seeing in the corners and whatnot. But for now, the data that we have right now is looking pretty promising. So
yeah, and if you guys haven't seen pictures of this head, it looks really, really good. That's my opinion, and I think you're going to see that you've got good velocity all the way through the port. It's not going to be something that's real, that's real happy in the center, fading to the outside or anything. I think it looks like a good port. There's a ripple in the roof, but I think that you were forced to do that, or it's just the photo that I've seen. But it looks like a really, really good port. I like it a lot.
Are you talking about the little lip in the bowl area?
Yeah, just before the bowl.
Yep. Yeah, I need to change a couple of the like pivot points on how the machine kind of comes in, and change a couple of the angles of those planes. That's all just in the programming, just kind of trying to move things around so that the machine doesn't leave that lip there. It's a really small lip. It looks a lot worse than it is. You can even have some ports that there's virtually no lip at all, but you'll still see it, and that's basically just because of the direction of how it was cut, kind of like a lawn. When you see a lawn,
yep, almost what you'd call a shadow.
Right. Yeah. So you'll always see that little lip that looks like it's there, but if we can get it to be virtually not there, it'd be perfect. But yeah, it's just a couple little programming modifications that need done. So
we do have
a listener wanting to know, does this require a specific intake manifold then to fit the oval port?
I wouldn't say it's required per se. It's in the same location as the LS3 port, and the height and width of the port are the same. That being said, the corners of the port, those radiuses, are wider than the stock ones that are. So if you were to lay an LS3 manifold over it, except for the corners, I can't say how much that's going to make a difference, but we are having a few different companies that are working on making an oval or like a BR3 specific intake manifold just to, get that to line up. So.
Now, I haven't seen the head yet, but can you make a shelf manifold match that port?
No, because the manifold corners are sharper than the BR3 is. So that's how
I'm thinking you could fill it with a little bit of DevCon or something.
Yeah,
kind of blend it out.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to add material, you can make it work.
Yep.
Okay.
It wouldn't be that hard.
Right. Yeah. So like I said, it's I don't think it's a huge deal per se, but that's part of how we were able to get the that CSA so small. So I was able to make the port as wide as a LS3 head and as tall as one. That way we don't have to, if you're looking at the picture that's on the live feed right now, on that left side of that port, that is your left side. And that, air doesn't like to turn. So if we can kind of straighten that wall out as much as we can without pushing through that push rod hole, that's going to be your best bet. So a lot of people are just like, oh, we need to get a smaller CSA. Let's just make the whole entire port small. But if I can make those radiuses a lot shallower to where they're not as sharp, I can bring in that material. So I have more volume there of material anyway. And I can widen that port out without making it so big. So that port looks like it's big because it's wide and it's tall, but it's really not. That CSA or the area of the port is smaller than a stock unported LS3 head. And the picture that's up there right now, that's actually our 250 cc port. So we have the smaller 240 cc one as well.
And the significance of the 250 for me is that something that I've been, I worked in a cylinder head shop 20 years ago, and something that has always been a target for me with an LS head and like any performance head really is a head that will go 300 at 4 and 400 at 7. And the 250, to the best of my recollection that I've messed with, is the first cylinder head to hit both of those numbers in a single port for like a standard style LS head. We're not talking about the Baker Engineering billets or the Moses or the DRs or the CRs from GM. We're just talking about like your normal heads that you might be able to bolt on a stock 4-bolt block.
Right. And like what John was saying, generally speaking, when you're able to hit those low lift numbers, you're not going to be able to hit them on the high end. And if you hit high end numbers, it's usually because it's a bigger port and it's going to suffer on that low end. So we're able to get best of both worlds there.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing to be able to hit both of those with the same port. To have that efficiency, that mid-lift flow efficiency, and that coefficient of discharge through the mid-lift that we know makes an amazing torque curve, and then to have the CFM capability at the higher lifts and the up, to help support cylinder fill in the upper RPM ranges as well. Dude, you flabbergasted me with that port, and it's just one badass cylinder head. I can't wait to get the pair that for me.
No, I haven't seen what you did with the chamber. Is it pretty much like a stock LS3 chamber? Have you made your own adjustments to it?
It looks a lot different than your normal LS3 chamber. So being a 15-degree head, it's the intake side of the chamber soft, where it's kind of hard to make the exhaust side soft because it's kind of flat and then it kind of takes like a sharp turn up. So when you see the picture of the chamber, if you don't know what you're looking at, you'd almost look like you're looking at a 12-degree head because it's gradual coming up. So we're able to basically just kind of lay that back. There's a good pad behind the spark plug as well. So instead of just having like this spark plug and then this 90-degree corner stock LS3 head, there is somewhat of a pad there just to kind of get rid of some detonation, to prevent some detonation in that area. And we're able to still keep that backside or the intake side of the chamber soft. And we're still looking at a 71 cc chamber out of the machine before we even mill it. So if we mill 6 thou off the head, which is nothing, we're looking at a 70 cc chamber. So most of these guys are usually building engines. I've noticed that most of them are staying between a 68 and 70 cc chamber. So pretty happy that we're not having to mill a ton of material off the heads from the get-go. Like our haymaker heads, we usually have to mill like 30 to 40 off those heads just to get the 70 cc.
So can I ask, what kind of a price point are you going to be at with a fully CNC machine and ready to go head, sans parts, just the bare head?
If we're looking at a assembled head, we're looking at putting a Ferrea 6000 series valve set in it. With bronze guides and the BTR SK, John, I think it's 703, right?
Yep, the 703, the ultimate RPM kit.
703, which is going to be a 685 spring set up to about 1,700 installed height.
Yep, to support 650 lift for hydraulic roller applications.
Right. We're looking right now for the first 20 sets. I think we're going to sell them for $31.99, and then with powdered metal guides, so it'll be $32.99. After those first 20 sets, I think they're going to be going up to about $33 and $34.99.
Still not a bad price point.
Not at all. And what's nice about it is that, we're using a US based casting. We're using a Freya valve, which most people know that the valves themselves come from Argentina, but they're all machined here in the US. And, using a proven valve spring kit with it as well. So you can't go wrong. I'm not one of those guys that wants to use like an SPS dual valve spring or something. I know what works. And so we put in what works,
If you buy the assembled head, you're not buying junk.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of putting cheaper parts in my cylinder heads. I know, when I send the head out, we're not going to have to worry about them coming back. We don't have to worry about anything going wrong with the cylinder head by any means. So, you get what you pay for, and you're definitely going to be getting a quality product with these heads. And that's basically just your base price too. We're going to have for those that are making, $1,500, maybe more, we're going to be offering a softened chamber, which is like a conical dish into the chamber. You'll actually see like the bore shape around the chamber. That's just going to soften your quench pads, be able to run a few more degrees of timing. I'm not sure how much you've seen. I've heard of people picking up, 3 or 4 degrees of timing on boosted setups, which could be triple digit gains. So we'll have that option, as well as, of course, your Inconel exhaust valve, solid roller setups. These heads will be offered in a hipped version as well as a solid dry deck version as well.
So I'm just going to throw this out there, but, I'm not ashamed that I make a very, very killer homemade mac and cheese, and I'd be willing to come out and do some training sessions for a discount. Just putting it out there.
I don't even know what to say to that. I'm super happy. I'm really excited about that. In fact, I'm going to send you a message right now. Book your flight right now. I have an extra room and everything.
and he also guarantees to be able to do it quieter than Ashley can.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty loud at work, so when I come home, I'm usually a pretty quiet person. So I kind of tiptoe around.
Gavin, we do have a listener wondering, can you explain what a softened chamber entails?
Let me try to explain this. It's really hard to explain these things without physically showing someone, in person. But
usually on a softened chamber, what ends up happening is the quench pads on the chamber, which is literally the area outside of the chamber where the deck of the head is exposed to the piston crown. When the piston comes up, these flat areas are dead parallel to the top of the piston, usually behind the spark plug to the outside of the head. And usually the big quench pad is on the intake side, inside of the valves. When you soften a chamber, what the purpose of that is you cut that quench pad on an angle, and you purposefully get it unparalleled to the crown of the piston, because doing that, getting those two surfaces out of parallel reduces the propensity for the chamber to want to create pre-ignition and create detonation. Like they do when they are parallel.
Technically.
It does make the chamber a little bit less efficient, and that's the whole point of it. Way on boosted applications, supercharged and turbo applications, it makes the chamber, it makes the engine less sensitive to timing.
You'll see really aggressive softening on big matrix motors.
Yes. I put a pretty aggressive picture up online so you can get a better visual of what it's doing. It doesn't have to be this extreme. It's often much less extreme than this, but this is a picture that kind of gives you the idea.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pictures in the world right there. If you look, you can see side by side with this picture what they've done with the quench pad to the intake side and the quench pad on the back side of the spark plug. On this particular head, this is a solid BD 2300 Brodix head. I actually know this head specifically that this picture was taken of. And they've literally created this chamber shape to look like a Hemi. And there is no quench pad whatsoever. So there are no parallel surfaces that create that pre-ignition in those two spots where those two flat surfaces are on that chamber.
Okay, so now there is a difference. I do want to interject because Brandon Smith says it's reducing squish in a sense. There is a difference between squish and quench. It's a very minor difference, but squish would be squish is when the head and the piston are parallel with each other. It can also be quench, but when we're talking about squish, usually we're talking about 140 thousandths, 120 thousandths around the outside of the piston, where we want to keep the head parallel with the piston, and that's to create mixture motion on the outside edges. That's different than having a quench pad that's being pulled back, because that's basically having too much squish. If I explained that correctly.
Yeah, the quench pad makes it too wide. Yeah, we want to.
Yeah, you still want to have some squish.
Right. But like Scott said, this is literally this is chamber softening to an extreme with this picture. Most of the time, people will just go in and take this pad and lay it down on a 7 to 10 degree angle up toward the center of the chamber, and might just make it like a 10 degree cone just to get them out of parallel. Because if you can just get them out of parallel a little bit, you see it's very, very effective at quelling any tendency for that chamber to want to pre-ignite or detonate.
Is that something that can be done equally well on the piston?
It can. A lot of times with the big stroke engines that have a lot of compression, they'll do a dish that is symmetrical to the chamber shape, and they'll have a squish band around the outside like Mark was talking about, and then they'll come in with, instead of just doing a generic dish, they'll do an actual shaped dish to try and control the mixture motion as the piston comes up, to help that. And that is something that some people are doing as well. But a lot of times it's easier to do it straight in the combustion chamber of the heads too, especially depending on the stroke of the engine. Like LS stuff, the short stroke, you don't have the room to come in and put 18 or 20 cc's worth of dish in the piston to get to your desired compression ratio due to the way the chambers and the heads come out. You can't get cylinder heads. There's not a lot of cylinder head choices down in the 30 cc range on the chamber. So it's easier to just leave a flat top in the piston and do all the work in the chamber to achieve what you're wanting to achieve there.
Well, Supercar asked, wouldn't a flat top be more efficient? And in my experience, the most efficient piston is a parabolic dish. I understand that a flat top has the least amount of surface area, but in my experience, a small parabolic dish seems to make the most power. I mean, that's just been my experience. But compression is king. I mean, if you got to put a dome on it, put a dome on it. I've got stuff out there with 46, 48 cc domes just to make it run. Notably big block Chevys. They're just plain ugly. They have ugly pistons, you know.
That's true.
Yeah, because they got bathtub chambers.
When you're starting out with
a picture of one of those up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when you're
these are
starting out with
traditional
100.
big block Chevys, not the modern cylinder heads.
Yeah.
Right. When you get into the symmetrical port, you know, shallow valve angle, pro stock style heads, the chambers are vastly different.
Yeah, but your average 20 to 22 intake valve degree head has got a.
I mean, even the Brodix SR20 has a horridly huge chamber.
Yep. It's the size of a small bathtub. You could give a newborn a bath in them.
No, I'm actually pretty excited about your cylinder head, Gavin, and I wasn't picking on you. I really would like to try a set on something. I love oval ports, and I like the shape of the roof. I like what you did with it, and I wish you all the luck in the world with it. I really think it's a nice looking piece.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. A lot of hard work and hours and thought behind it. I'd described the port, weeks before I even touched it. I had the exhaust port done most of the way. I still have to modify it a little bit, but I had it all scribed out and everything. The chamber is scribed out, and you can ask John. I mean, I didn't touch that port for like 3 weeks because I was just kind of nervous because there's just so much different, you know. And I was like, man, I hope this works, you know. But I literally would take the head off the bench, look at it a little bit, kind of decide if I was going to do it or not. Keep going back and forth, and I put it back on the bench. But one night I just told John, I was like, all right, I'm fucking doing it. But I'm really happy that I find myself really lucky because generally speaking, when you're working on a porter's casting and you're trying new things, the flow bench is going to be something that you're going to become pretty good friends with because, certain things need to be changed. Even like as far as your valve job, you might be trying different top cut, bottom cuts, and bowl cuts, different percentages of your blending. It might go turbulent really early. It might start backing up, or maybe it just sees really low air. And first trip to the flow bench, and it did everything that we wanted it to, and then some. In fact,
so our own Tom Vigio has a question for you. Is your smallest CSA, is that at the pinch, or are you the smallest at the throat?
Smallest is at the throat, and that's on the 250cc. John, you'll have to refresh my memory. I think it was 2.89, I think.
291 MCA on the throat, not counting the valve stem. And we're 317 at the intake face. So we have a good amount of taper into the port, and the throat is the MCSA of the port.
Yeah,
what size bench is it being flowed on? A 1020 or a 600?
It's a Jameson. I have to look up what that one is. It's the Jameson flow bench that you can. It's not an actual Jameson bench. Jameson sells it. I got to look up to see what the actual name of the bench is, but I got to look to see how it compares to like a floor.
It's not end of the world stuff. It was just a question.
Okay.
Well, thanks for coming on and talking to us about it for a minute, Gavin.
Hey, not a problem, man. I appreciate the invite. It's fun stuff talking about cylinder head stuff. I geek out over.
Well, you don't understand what a big deal it is to have John Bewley get on his page and say, "I finally have an LS3 head I like." That was a momentous occasion.
He was sober when he said that too. So
I have a screenshot that says, "If the thing goes 300 at 400 and 400 at 7, you'll convert me from Cathedral Port." And it did exactly that.
Yo, I told you I'd dish you too.
Yeah, you said he'd kiss me. So
I'll make good on. Yeah, I'll make good on that at PRI or something. We'll get that on live video. I ain't scared. I'll post that shit up.
RealTuners Uncut.
Yeah.
Bully gone wild.
My name in that stuff.
Yeah.
Tyler, hey, Gavin, can you send us some material that we can post to the website for people who want to follow up and understand a little bit more about SPS cylinder heads and how to get a hold of you guys? And
I got one more question for Gavin too. Tyler Eitzen wants to know, what bore size will the smaller of the two heads accommodate?
The 240 will fit down to a 6 liter 4-inch bore, and so will the 250. It's an LS3 style head, so you can on a 4-inch bore, you can fit the 2165. If it's an actually aspirated deal, that's probably going to be the head that I would choose. you generally speaking on naturally aspirated stuff, you kind of want to just shove the biggest valve in there and as much air as you can shove in the bore. On boosted application, if it's like a 4070 and smaller bore, we're probably going to stick to the 240 cc with the 2125 intake valve. Some of the 4125 bore turbo deals or bigger inch deals, we're going to end up going with the 250 cc.
Yeah, because I would actually think about reaching out to you for trying a set of these.
Yeah, they're going to be a badass piece. I think once we get some dyno time on them and figure out what they like and what they want for valve events, I have a feeling they're going to be fairly different than other style LS3 heads. Dare I say?
Oh, if I end up getting these, I'll get with you, John, and we'll figure out a cam for this because I got a stock bottom end 6 liter. I'd like to try it on.
Yeah, we can definitely figure something out. I got a dyno mule they're going to go on and do some naturally aspirated testing.
I know a guy who's got a 6 liter dyno mule too. So
I believe Will Tetra will probably be one of the first guys that'll have a pretty straightforward A/B test. He's running our Dark Pro 1 LS3 heads, and however much I love that head, it sees over 400 CFM at 700 at 4, but that's on a 50-degree seat. That's a 290 cc intake runner, and his car hauls with those heads. He does have one of the first sets of the BR3s on order, and he does plan on. I think Scott, you tuned it, I believe.
Yes, sir. Well, we tuned it as a group at my class.
Actually, okay. So I believe he plans on going back to the same dyno. And pretty much doing a straight A/B test with them. So I'm pretty excited to see the changes in power as well as just other stuff like when peak torque comes in, how fast it spools, how long it holds on to the timing.
I don't know how much of that kind of data the converter really kind of fucks up. You know what I mean? I'd like to see
on
the engine dyno, but eventually Brad Nagel's working on his, maybe have it go live in the spring. And if he's listening tonight, he's driving home. But I'd like to get that combo on an engine dyno and get some real answers. Converters really throw some of that stuff off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, speaking of Tetro's heads, Gavin, those things need to make a pit stop in Springfield, Missouri, by the way. I got to talk to you about that later offline.
Alrighty.
Are either or both of these heads 6-bolt capable?
Yes, there is a 6-bolt casting. There is a 6-bolt casting. There is a solid casting. And you can also get the wet or the dry solid casting hipped as well.
You don't need 6 bolts.
There is a myriad of options with Brodix for the casting itself.
I believe they're all 6-bolt.
Yeah, I don't even think they do a 4-bolt BR3 anymore.
No. Worst case scenario, if they're going on like a CTSV that the 6-bolt ear sticks out into the end of the headers, we can always just shove an end mill against it and mill the ear off. So
making 5-bolt.
Uses a standard head stud.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. All the head column stacks are 2 spec of all the other LS heads. They don't require any special head bolts or stuff.
Yeah, and the beauty about this head too is it's a factory 15-degree valve angle. So instead of most of these aftermarket LS3 heads running a rolled angle of like a 12-degree or even some of the 13.5. When it comes to class racing, some of the class racing, you have to run your factory valve angle. So this will be a class-specific available cylinder head.
Would this be a class that has to run stock turbos or like specific brands of turbos, or can you run any brand of turbo with this head?
That might be a bully question.
Well, speaking of turbos.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
What grinds your gears?
What grinds my gears? What grinds my gears? What grinds my gears? Play it again, Scott. Play it again.
You know what really grinds my gears?
People taking payoffs to ban competitors' products. That's what really grinds my gears.
As soon as this is over, I'm just packing up my mixer and I'm just gonna head out for good. No longer live with this address.
For listeners that might not be completely hip to this discussion, John or somebody, would y'all just step back a second and talk about
explain this story? Anybody?
Yeah.
Is there anybody?
Okay.
Is there anybody out there that doesn't understand the topic at hand? Please raise your hand. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Background info.
Some background info is that the class sponsor of a certain class has managed to get a certain promoter to ban a certain competitor's product that's literally kicking its ass from one end of the track to the other in said
You are
certain class.
alleging this anyhow. You are alleging this.
I am alleging that this is is what is going on. So
everything from here forward, Bill, do you got any like boilerplate stuff for this?
Yeah. The opinions presented by the individual hosts on this show do not necessarily represent the views of RealTuners LLC or its sponsors. Please listen with caution.
We don't have any sponsors, and most of us agree.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get the word allegedly on a hot.
Most of us have had the same thing happen to us in the industry, and this is what's very frustrating: is that the entire industry is driven by marketing and dollars under the table. And this goes on in the automotive repair world. It goes on in the automotive performance world. It goes on behind the scenes at the magazines. It goes on behind the scenes at the TV shows. And everything that is fed to you as to what a quote unquote good product is, or the most powerful, or the most this, usually there's dollars being handed to somebody to say that. You know, the official battery of NASCAR, the official blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's nonstop, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the component. This latest one with the turbochargers is supposedly about safety, yet the turbos that are being allowed appear to be the most unsafe. In fact, one of our listeners asked if all the noise at like when we were restarting the show for the 37th time, you know, happened to be parts flying through the crowd. So, you know, and this, yeah, but it's very frustrating being in the industry and seeing this happen. And that's what is grinding John's gears.
Marketing stuff up.
I mean, this is just like E3 spark plugs sponsoring somebody in Top Fuel. There's not a top fuel car. There's not a top fuel car in NHRA that has ever even been started on a damn E3 spark plug.
I wouldn't put one of those in my lawnmower.
The only question I held back from Jack Beckman was the E3 spark plug thing. I'm glad
you know, and that's all this is, and it's just absolute and complete utter bullshit.
So Supercar wants to know this: if this specific as turbo is banned, what's stopping me from putting a banned center cartridge in an unknown housing? Well, because they're going to take it apart, and if it's not 100% stock housing, then therefore it's illegal. And Brandon Smith says, tell Bewley he's wrong. Brandon, what is Bewley wrong about? Tell us.
Yeah,
tell us, Brandon. Please tell us, what is Bewley wrong about?
Get him. Yeah, I want to hear this bullshit.
Yes, Supercar, you can tell the wheels apart. And
it's going to be like 20 seconds before he hears that question, just so you know.
He says there are multiple cars running up to half E3s.
Yeah, that's totally completely pointless for the
what does that mean?
Yeah, he's saying I'm lying that there's no top fuel cars running E3 spark plugs. But I guess that just means that half of the fuel teams are dumb and actually trying to use those things.
Oh, no, he says 16 of the 32 plugs. So maybe that's just keeping compression in the hole. I don't know.
Maybe that's what they idle on. I don't know. Or that's the first set that burns out and turns into glow plugs, I guess.
Having seen the cylinder heads coming off of some of the NHRA top fuel engines at 2019 events, I can tell you, A, all the plugs in all the cylinders are functioning, and B, they're all the same, and C, there are stickers on the valve covers that identify what is purportedly in the head.
And ain't none of them saying E3.
I just said they're stickers.
Yeah.
An E3 plug would detonate that thing instantly.
Oh, yeah.
It would just burn right up.
Yeah, it wouldn't even idle on an E3 plug.
Do we know anyone that we could try this? Because I bet it would blow the porcelain right out of it.
I don't have a motor I would be willing to sacrifice for that. Sorry.
As I understand it, so Supercar says this band turbo. How do they determine if it's legal or legit or not? Wheel size, housing size. As I understand it, the way they're doing the rule is it cannot be a modified housing, so it has to be a 100%. Is that correct, John, or correct?
Yeah, it's not the housing that's modified. It's work that's done on the hub of the turbine wheel. So I'm not going to get into what it is. It's just work that was done on the hub.
Can I say whose turbos are not legal under the new rules? Can I say that?
Anybody that does a modified turbine wheel, the quote unquote modified turbine wheel hub. So any manufacturer that chooses to do that is banned. Supposedly Duck's going to put on this race with 16 cars, and he is going to provide the turbochargers at the track, and they're going to run 10 passes and 5 with Garrett's and 5 precisions to see who the baddest of the bad is, this, that, and the other. But, there's some other shady shit that's been going on that kind of irritates me, because earlier this year at one of the races in the spring, an employee of Precision was allowed to assist in the tech, measuring turbochargers from competitors in this class. And me personally, I think it's bullshit. And then all of a sudden on DuckX Productions page, a former employee of Precision for over 20 plus years who was head of global what the hell ever is all of a sudden signing his name to posts that go up on DuckX page. So the promoter is obviously in bed with one of the companies providing turbochargers for this class that they are the title sponsor of. And in my opinion, it's a blatant 110% conflict of interest for the promoter to be doing this. And I honestly think the sponsor is upset with the fact that their stuff is not ran in the top 10 of the class for 3 races now. And it hasn't been in the winner's circle for 3, maybe 4 races. I can't really remember that far back. I know it's at least 3. So, it's just blatant and 110% politics that I feel is detrimental, to the growth of the sport. And it really grinds my gears.
It has nothing to do with safety or kicking wheels out or anything like that.
It ain't got shit to do with safety, because if it was about safety and he was really concerned about safety, we would go all the way back to when Precision was modifying the shaft of Garrett GT55 turbines, and the whole damn turbine wheel was breaking off at the shaft because they cut the shaft down to fit their bearing instead of using a bearing that was the same size as the Garrett, and making exit out of down pipes and burning up people's cars. So they're literally trying to make an argument about safety to ban a turbocharger that hasn't had less than half a dozen failures total, 2 in the class, compared to a company that has that many a race and has had that many in one race in the past. So to say it's about safety and not ban the turbocharger that has had more failures than the one they're trying to ban is like literally the most hypocritical thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh, Mario Orsini, Jay Blanchard just contributed to the conversation, and he said he blew up 16 pair of turbos in one season. That right there, that one car has had more turbine failures from the manufacturer that is the title sponsor of the class and is one of the accepted units in the class now than the one that they're trying to kick out and ban.
John, did I hear you correctly that you said that they were going to be providing Spec turbochargers to the entrance in the class?
Supposedly, that's what this big race is going to be going down is going to be.
Everybody has to show up with pre-built pipes and hope they fit?
Well,
good luck, God bless.
All of these turbochargers are basically the same physically, dimensionally, right? So the compressor discharge is in the same location in reference to the downpipe that is in reference to the turbine inlet. And even if somebody has one of the V-band style housings on their car, the cartridge, they can take the 4-bolt cast iron housing off and they can put the cartridge in the V-band housing. But supposedly there's supposed to be this big race going down. And Duck is invited all of these cars or whatever, and there's going to be 16 of them, 16 of the best tuners. And he's supposedly offering $100,000. And they're going to make X amount of passes with one brand turbo and X amount of passes with the other brand turbo that he wants to stay in the class. And $50,000 is going to be given to the tuner of the fastest car, and $50,000 is going to be given to the car that is the fastest at this supposed race that I guess he's coming up with, or he's going to do, or this, that, and the other.
So 16 cars means he's supplying 16 turbos. So maybe he should get some backup ones, because we already know that probably 4 or 5 of those at a minimum are going to fail during this testing, passing, whatever you want to call it.
They're going to have to load up a mini. They're going to have to load a mini Freightliner up and bring down more than double of what they plan on running, just so to make sure they got enough units.
John, would you chance your motor with an unknown turbo and put it on kill and send it down the track? I think not.
No, hey, it is what it is. In the end, the reality of it is it's Duck's playground. But, the hypocrisy of the whole thing just stinks to high heaven to me. The deal with the precision employee, and I have pictures, by the way. This is not hearsay. There's photographic evidence of a precision employee, current employee, assisting in tech and measuring a competitor's turbocharger.
I remember when you posted about
Does this have to do with loophole racers, John?
They might think it's a loophole, but when you're putting on races going for $100,000, don't you think everybody is going to be trying to find every single gray area that they can find to try and put themselves in the winner's circle? Because what stinks about this whole situation is everybody knows on a turbo engine, all the horsepower is in the turbocharger. I don't give a shit what you do with the cylinder heads. I don't give a shit what you do with the pistons. If the turbocharger doesn't move the air, you're not making the horsepower. And what gets me is if he's going to start requiring all these spec parts, why does the small block nitrous guy get to pick who ports his cylinder heads? I mean, if we're going to start having spec parts, we need to make all the rules the same for everything. The nitrous guys, they need to have cylinder heads that are only ported by the people that produce the casting. The intake manifolds can only be ported by the people who produce the casting. Camshafts can only come directly from comp. No engine builder can spec it. No engine builder should be able to spec the damn camshaft. The carburetor straight from Holley, whoever it is that you're using, it just stinks to high heaven. That
kind of like going to the rental go-kart place and just hopping in a rental go-kart.
Right.
NASCAR.
Huh. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's
NHRA Pro Stock.
It's funny because all of this is getting raised with the turbo cars, and the turbo car is not even the fastest in the class. They got blower cars that are 2 and 3 mile an hour faster and 5, 6, 7 numbers faster than any turbo car that's in the class, due to, in my opinion, questionable moves that were done by a blower company in the off season for the new special blower that got brought out. Yeah, I'd give up 4 or 5 millimeter to take a 300-pound weight break too. But there's not been anything addressed about that. But then they want to go after somebody who's doing their best to put a turbo up front. And it's just, I don't know, it just stinks to me. It literally just stinks to me that they're trying, that they're trying like this to push these people out and only
Dave, mute your mic, please. Dave, mute your mic, please.
Krasinski. I can mute him. Hold on. This is how you get fired from RealTuners. Hey, Krasinski, quit typing. Dave, we'll just wait on Dave. Not listening.
Good Lord, man.
Go ahead. Hey, Krasinski, hit your mute. You're going to type. Go ahead.
But, hey, that's my rant for it. That's how I feel about it. I think it's all political bullshit. And I think if they're going to let it, if they're going to try and have a fair shake, they need to walk back everything they've posted in the last week about what they've done for this deal. And I don't know. I just feel like somebody got bought off. And that's, I don't think it's fair. I think the people that have put in the most research and development time, that have worked their ass off, are, getting kicked in the teeth on this deal. But hey, that's just how I feel about it.
I need to have outro music for that rant. Sorry.
I know, right?
That was awesome. I think you did good.
Thank you, John.
Get a letter. We'll just probably get a letter.
I'll probably get a letter.
We covered that, and we talked about Gavin's heads, and we still haven't talked about Bonneville.
Oh yeah, Salt Flat's coming up. Hopefully, what's the weather report is good. My understanding is that the guys were out there dragging it last week, dragging the tracks, and they kind of scope out where the courses go, and then they'll move them through the week if they get torn up. So they go out early and scope stuff out, and they do some dragging, and they set up cones and things like that to get ready for the traffic out there. Because it's literally such a large area. Like, if you don't have cones, you better have GPS to know where you're going, because you can't really, go to the horizon, basically.
Scott, I got a report yesterday from Freddie Dannenfelser, and where we normally have the course, the salt is still a little bit wet, so they moved it over near the international course. And the report is mile 1 and 2 are pretty good. 3 is a little rough. 4 is really good. And 5 is very rough right now. But it's still 5's still a little wet, and they're hoping to be dragging by the end of next week. And so we'll get another report there. I talked to Rick Vesco about 2 hours before I came on tonight, and he said about the same thing. So it's really not looking bad. Last year was a phenomenal year. The 2 years before were pure disasters. We are racing on Mother Nature's course, and that's just the way it is.
You take what you get, which is kind of the way that works out there, and then there's a phenomenal year every 8 or 10 or 12 years. And then it's just something in between. So my understanding is that that's pretty typical for this early on, though. I've actually gone out there in the last few years and waited 3 extra days. They pushed everything back because if it's dry, if they don't get rain, this next 2 weeks could turn it into a fabulous course still. That's happening.
Absolutely.
So it's a rapidly drying thing.
I've run Speed Week that the first 3 miles were absolutely awful, and you had to pick it up in the 4 and the 5 to make anything happen. Came back for the World of Speed, and I actually laid rubber leaving the push truck through the first 2 gears. And I've never had salt that phenomenal.
I heard the same. If you couldn't set a record last year, you couldn't set a record.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we couldn't set a record, but it wasn't the salt's problem.
Hopefully we got that taken care of this year.
I certainly hope so.
I think so. So anyway, Joe, that's Joe Timney. He and I are going to be pitted with the Vesco crew. So come check them out. They're going to have the Turbinator out again this year. I understand that correctly?
Yeah, Rick got all new aluminum rims from Greg Peck. Greg Peck ran fuel cars in the 60s and 70s, I guess, and has always raced on and off at Bonneville. And he's actually found an old roadster, his old roadster, and rebuilt it. And he'll be racing. I don't think this year, possibly near the end of this year. He machined new aluminum rims for Rick, and the tires are all loaded up. They took them up to Tom Birkeland's, put them on the machine, and ran them at speed over 500 miles an hour on a tire tester. Right. And his plan is to set a record over 500. They set a record at 490 something. 93 or something, and the exit speed was over 500 miles an hour last
like 503,
August.
The exit speed, right? The first guy to trap over 500 with a wheel-driven car. Now this is a gas turbine powered, about somewhere around 4,500, 4,800 horsepower total.
Yeah, but that's the conservative number.
Yeah, okay. It's not the most powerful. I just looking at the specs on that turbine setup they're running. I actually can't wait to check this thing out. We're gonna pit, guys. I'm gonna learn about it.
It's really wild. I climbed in it, and you sit in the seat, and it lays completely flat, and then you push back with your butt and your feet, and it comes up into location, and the pin locks it. So to get out of the car, you're laying so far back you can't even believe it. And you pull the pin and slide forward, so you're actually able to sit up, and your head can clear the roll cage.
Got it.
It's yeah. The car, I forget how long it is. You can't even believe how long it is, and it's 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, it's the 4-wheel drive car. It's a Streamliner. It's like a missile land on its side, and it's gas turbine powered, but it's 4-wheel drive.
Yeah. It has 2 giant industrial gearboxes that change the direction for the drive. The shaft is spinning right next to your hip. It's intimidating.
And y'all call drag racers crazy.
Whew. Scott, are you able to
different breed, son?
Oh, dude, that's putting it mildly.
If somebody sends me pictures on Facebook, I can put it up.
Yeah,
so there was a picture on my page.
Scott, are you able to talk a little bit more about the project that you're working on that you'll be tuning on, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about it a little bit. Joe hooked me up with it, but it's they had an issue last year with this 304 cubic inch. It's a NASCAR-derived engine, pretty late model stuff too. Excuse me. And they had me go out to North Carolina here a couple months ago and kind of help out with the tune on. I'll do the tune on the engine dyno. I mean, we did the steady state and everything on Keith and Jeff Dorton's engine dyno, which was a neat trip because they've let the name long affiliated with top NASCAR. I mean, multiple championships with Jeff Gordon. The Dorton family engines. Anyway, it's an interesting story for sure, but great people, and Joe said they had a need for a tuner because they had a tuning problem last year and the motor burnt up just north of 300 miles an hour, and it needs to go, what's the current record, 310?
It's 310 and change. It ran 304 at half throttle.
Right. And that was part of the problem, was he was getting in and out of the throttle, and the data log showed that the closed loop correction was turning off, and the fuel table itself was like 20% out of whack and lean, and it was adding fuel. So when he'd rock the throttle or move it slowly, it would come out of correction, and it would just go to the fuel table, and it was way off. So they had the wide open good for G-level tune, but not that the fuel table didn't slope back too aggressively at lower vacuums. When you get up there at Bonneville, you might be racing at 75 kilopascals, right? So this is a naturally aspirated 304 cubic inch little baby motor that they wind up. Still, it's capable of 800 plus horsepower if you want to spin it enough. They try to spin it in the high 700 or mid 700 range, whatever. But neat deal to work with these guys on legitimate NASCAR stuff. And got a Holly Dominator on it, and it's this yellow car, this 444. Got put up right now. The shorter of the two Streamliners. The longer one is the Turbinator, the red and yellow. But anyway, so both of those cars will be together. I get to work on the responsible for the tune and making sure we don't burn up the little baby D-size motor. It's 304 cubic inches. But they're going for D-gas Streamliner record, which means it runs on gasoline, naturally aspirated. Everything else with Streamliner, kind of the sky's the limit. To be a Streamliner, you got to have enclosed wheels. But other than that, this thing, and I should talk a little bit. Maybe you can talk about it, Joe. The history of the Vesco Streamliner bodies. This family has a whole bunch of Streamliners that other people use and molds they've made for other people. They're really into the Streamliners. Do you know anything about their background there?
Yes. John Vesco, the father, started the car in 60 years ago. He laid some frame rails and he built a body and started racing. And they've stretched this car multiple times. They lent it out for 11 years to another team, the Niche team, who cut the frame rails and power jacked them out and put a big block in it and raced it a bunch for 11 years, and then gave it back. And Rick kind of updated it and put another motor in it and put his young daughter in it. And she set this record at 310 and change. Then the car sat dormant. And this guy, Bob Blakely, called me and said, look, I'm looking for a ride. I'm in the 200 mile an hour club, but I want to be in the 300 mile an hour club. And do you know any rides I can get?
Show up at those meetings at that club, at the smaller club.
So I knew Rick had this car sitting because he was concentrating on the Terminator, the turbine car. So I called Rick and said, do you have any interest? And he goes, well, let me get back with you. And he called back and goes, who is this guy? And then his partner, John Spangler, who ran Hooker Headers for decades. And he called me and said, tell me about this guy, Joe. And I told him, he's road raced motorcycles. He's done things. He's raced a NASCAR with us when we owned the East Coast Timing Association. He built a modified rear engine roadster. He raced that in Bonneville, got in a 2 club. I said, he's a good driver. He's a good guy. I think you'll like him. So Bob went out with them and put his NASCAR motor that he bought from Rick Hendricks in the car with a Liberty 7-speed. And they had not such a great success. And it was I think it was more because Rick and the crew were working on the Terminator and they couldn't focus on this car. So Bob approached me and said, what do you think if we just take this car and update it? Because it really needs some love. It's been sitting too much. So we took the project on over a year ago, and all last winter we stripped the car to bare metal, updated the chassis, made it fit the rules, rewired it, replumbed it, new fire systems, got the motor updated, switched from carburetors, which the hood scoop was less than a half inch over the dual Hollies of clearance, and you weren't getting the air. There was a lot of problems, and we switched to fuel injection. We did a new air intake for the car, and we split the air clean.
Hey, Evans, they're bitching that the audio just died.
No.
Not again. Well, we can keep going. We're recording it. So,
Okay. Anyway, the car has really come along, and with Scott's help this year, I think I know we've got it. If we've got the salt and things all work out, and no salt gremlins come and meet us, I think we got a good shot at setting a record and up in the number where it needs to be. And I have a number in my head which I'm not sharing where I think the car can go, but
Norton seemed to have a good handle on that too when I was out there. They knew they had already had enough reference from, hey, other cars do this with this power on this dyno, these similar combos. So they had a real good idea of what it can run. And I mean, it's even got some in the bank just for a spare. If everything's sitting up and running good, he should be able to run it out a little bit above his goal. So.
And I know we bumped up the gear, and so I think we're going to do well, and I think it's going to be a fun deal. You're going to love the crew, Scott. It's a great group of people. I have never worked with a team of this caliber in my life. Unfortunately, Tim Turner can't be here. The crew chief, Bob Hustler, was Kyle Petty's crew chief. And as he said, we had a great car. We just needed a driver.
Good thing Bob hopefully isn't listening. Poor guy.
Yeah. And the other guy, Tim Turner, was Kenny Schrader's crew chief, amongst other people that he crew chief for. And between the two of them and the rest of the crew, we have a phenomenal fabricator, metal fabricator. We have the Christ, what's his name? Yeah. My Basil Hayden's gone now, so
no worries. Lots of good people on this crew.
No.
I think it's going to be. I know it's going to be a fun time. We had a ball last year.
Yep.
I've got a number in my head.
What do you think it'll do?
I think it's going to go 20s. I think it's going to be 323 to 326.
All right, I'll share.
Go ahead.
330.
Yeah, I thought 325. If the salt's there, it's all going to depend on the salt. But if if it was as good as last year, then maybe 330. I mean, Joe's going to know from the gearing what's probably going to be the ultimate limit. I also know that we ran the motor out the back door, and it's cammed such that it keeps making power with RPM. They didn't have to have an optimized cam combo for just target RPM. So they've got some, like I said, they've got some in the bank as far as it can run it out the back door on a good path. So
I think you can go mid 320s and reset the record by a solid 12, 13 mile an hour.
We got to do that twice too, right? So people.
I know. That's what I know. You got to go both directions. You got to turn around, night and impound, all that stuff.
No, on this one, this isn't FIA. This is the SCCA. We go the same direction.
Oh, okay.
Unless there's next problem with course, but we'll go the same direction.
The problem is we have to go next morning.
Yeah.
And the air's denser. It doesn't mean a lot in the Streamliner. When I set the record in a comp coupe, generally, if you ran late in the afternoon, when you came back in the morning, it was 3 to 5 mile an hour slower because of the denser air. Because you run out of acceleration pushing the air. When you get in the fourth mile, the fifth mile is rodeo because you're pushing air and the car is barely accelerating, and it's a handful to drive.
Yeah, it wants to swap ends because it's building up such a wave of air. I think it's driving fast through deep snow. Invisible.
When I set the degas record in comp coupe, I blew a tire at 233 right in the lights, a back tire, and I thought it blew the engine. So I clutched it, grabbed the fire bottles, killed the engine, and then the car dropped and ripped the wheel well out, and it got interesting. When you're pushing that air and all of a sudden things come apart, it gets real interesting ride.
Yeah, things get unstable real fast. So, well, both these cars, the Bestial cars, are legendary in their stability and run real good. So it's you got a real good car.
I tried talk Blakely into putting it in the wind tunnel, and I pretty much come to the decision that things go well with Bonneville when we come back. I'm going to pay to put it in the wind tunnel in North Carolina. I want to know the numbers. I've got a bunch of ideas that I want to prove to myself, work or don't work. This car, what's interesting is none of Rick Vesco's cars have ever been in a wind tunnel. And when I went out to look at the car and talk about the project with Rick, I was out there 3 days. And I said, where'd you come up with the body design? He goes, my father did. He said, he was watching a bird fly and said, they got the body shape. And he goes, that's what the shape needs to be. And that's what they've stuck with. They built a lot of bodies. All the Ferguson Streamliner bodies are essentially pop-offs of 2 generations ago Little Giant car, which is what this is. So it's pretty interesting that these guys have developed this over 60 years, and it's never been in a wind tunnel.
Awesome. Just experience.
I would take days off and drive to North Carolina to be there when you put that car in the wind tunnel.
I'll tell you right now, if we do it, you're there. I'll call you.
Call me and let me know, because if there's ever going to be like the most epic day spent in a wind tunnel, it would be with a Streamliner like that.
Positively.
that would be beyond the level of epic for me.
I've had the opportunity to be in the wind tunnel with quite a few cars and quite a few motorcycles. And I walk away humbled and more knowledgeable each time.
Yeah, that would be a hell of a day.
Joe, I'll totally split the day with you.
Okay. Deal.
I want to know what the number is on mine, so
there you go.
We'll go halvesies.
Okay.
Hey Scott, what EFI is in the yellow car? Is that Holly?
Yeah, it's a Holly Dominator on
And
the piston engine, and then on the gas turbines are mechanically injected. So those are mechanical diesel type injection, constant flow, continuous flow deal. I'm going to learn all about it when I'm out there. I want to figure out how they make that thing work right. Gas turbine.
Those things are like ridiculous, because like I spent a night the other day, an evening, going down the YouTube rabbit hole, and the topic was gas turbine engines, and I found videos where they had cutaways, and they had one that had a 17 stage compressor in it. And they were talking about the science of blade pitch and spacing between the stages and all this stuff. And it was just ridiculously.
All that stuff is super critical. Super critical. They don't run.
Oh, yeah. And it was just, they were talking about all kinds of things. And I'm like, this is literally like a giant turbocharger. It's literally a giant axial flow turbocharger.
Yeah.
They inject gas.
Positively.
And I'm like, dude, this is like for somebody who's a turbo guy who really dives into the science of compressing air and flowing air through a centrifugal compressor and things of that nature. Like gas turbines are like the next step up in the evolution of that, in that thought process. And I went way down that rabbit hole, man. Way down that rabbit hole.
Hyper expensive.
I know.
On Mixler, they were wondering how long until someone puts a gas turbine in a radio car, and I said, well, about 5 seconds before the turbine is banned because it's from the wrong manufacturer.
It'll be GE only.
Right, Pratt & Whitney.
No Pratt & Whitney. Pratt & Whitney's illegal. GE only.
Right.
John, you would love Rick Vesco, and he is one of the nicest people to be around ever. and he just attracts some of the best talent that there is in on this project. And he's a humble man. He does so much himself. I mean, it's amazing. Unfortunately, his brother Don passed away of cancer. They went 458 miles an hour at the world of speed in 2000. And I had blown a tire in the lights and came off about 7.5, 8 miles. And they blew by me at 458. And his brother Don driving the car said, "That's not fast enough. We're not going to impound. We can go 500. And the next run, the car broke. And they never got to do it. And then he got sick and passed away.
I mean, that's just, Bonneville is a holy grail kind of thing for me. Like, to me right now, it's not touchable because I don't feel like I would have the time to invest in diving into that. I mean, I'm listed as an engine builder on a world record certification for a Bonneville record. To me, that's amazing considering, everything that goes into something like that. And it's an obscure pickup record that nobody cares about, but like the Streamliners and the big cars, the top tier cars, man, that just gets the juices and the ideas and the mind racing all over the place. And I would love to be able to get somewhere in my lifetime to where I'm involved, in something like one of the Vesco Streamliners for sure, because that's crazy to think about what they're doing.
I got to tell you, I always wanted to go to Bonneville, and I tried 3 times in the 70s, and life got in the way. And the later 90s, I saw this little piece about the East Coast Timing Association having events in North Carolina. I went to the first event, and it bit me in the ass. I came home and sold my rear engine Super Comp dragster the next week and went back there, hooked up with a guy with an injected nitro flathead and a highboy roadster, went to Bonneville in 98 for the 50th. And we ran 0.3 of a second off 0.3 of a mile an hour off of the record. And it made me crazy. And at that event, the people that owned ECTA asked me to drive one of their cars because it was rigid and they wanted to have me put suspension in it. I ended up partnering with these guys and raced three different cars with them. And the following year, the timing system broke. I fixed it, and I found out through the newsletter that I was the new chief timer. I did that for 16 years and timed over 40,000 runs.
Oh my gosh.
In 2004, the owner came to me and said, "I want to go back and race. You want to buy the place?" And I reached out to Keith Turk and said, "Look, you're already doing the driver's meeting. You're already involved. I'm doing timing. What do you say we just buy this thing and make it happen? I can't do it alone, and neither can you." So that's what we did. And I ran it for 10 years and with my wife and Keith's wife, Tanya. The girls ran registration. We were just the pretty faces behind people that really knew what they were doing. But Keith and I ran it. And then I'd had some health issues and running my chassis shop, trying to run the ECTA, answer tech questions constantly on the phone. It was just became too much for me. And I said, it's time, sell out. And then, but I tech many years at Bonneville and really got involved in the sport. And it is not monkey see, monkey do. There isn't any 2 chassis in the entire entry that are the same. A bunch of guys in a garage with a dream. And it's one-off everything. And there's nice stuff. There's rough stuff. There's phenomenal stuff. There's no money. And there's million guys like George Pote. He spends millions. He goes really fast. It gets press. It brings people out and keeps the organization running. John, you're welcome anytime. Call me, hook up with whoever I'm with, or if I'm, running my wife's bike. My wife has been 217 on a motorcycle, so we're into this, both of us.
That's just, it's, that's because that brings like funny jokes that I've always said all my life, that if I was ever going to go fast, there ain't no way I could do it on two wheels, because I wanted more between my fat ass and the blacktop than a little piece of leather. And the thought of going 215, 200 plus mile an hour on two wheels is just, it's I don't know. It's just like
Shane Stubbs. Some of their onboard video is pretty badass. That's a guy that he's 200.
Let's just say, but let's put it into perspective. It's not just 200 plus on two wheels. They're on the salt, which is akin to driving 215 miles an hour on snow.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Like I've got some fast bikes. I just made a comment the other day that my motorcycle makes more horsepower and as much torque as my road race car. And I've had that fast, but I can't imagine, like, I get on slightly crappy New England highways and I complain. I can't imagine going double the speeds or more I ride on salt.
Yeah, these guys.
And I grew up doing motocross.
These guys bitching and griping a little bit of a grass on blacktop when they come around the curve or something, and 200 mile an hour on the salt. It's unfathomable to me, because it's literally just hard for me to wrap my head around doing something like that.
I mean, hell, just the wind that might push you a little sideways as you're going down the lane.
I can tell you a funny story. I got on a bike and went 200, and I went 198, 198, 198, and Scott Guthrie, one of the most, he's got more land speed records than anybody on the face of the earth. He said, tuck your wings in. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, your feet. Tuck your feet in. The next run, when I got in high, I tucked my right foot in. When I got in high gear, I tucked my left foot in, and I went 201 and set a record and got in the 2 club.
Just something like that. I mean, you might have changed your frontal area. What?
Yeah, .000.
Right.
Something.
You changed the frontal area maybe 3 square inches, maybe 4 square inches by bringing your feet in, but that was worth 3 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Just that level of that razor's edge of what you're doing affecting your result is just crazy.
The first 2 runs, I went 193, 194, and they said, something's wrong, get on the bike. And I tucked, and I said, it's really pulling on my hands. And they went, oh shit, we've got the wrong pegs on the bike. You can't get your elbows over your knees. And I went from 193 to 199, getting my elbows on top of my knees. And I could tell there was something wrong, because it was like I'm hanging on for dear life. Now, put this in perspective, is the guy out of Texas, Shane Stubbs. He's one badass bike rider.
He's
in Maine,
badass, right?
Last weekend in Loring, Maine, he went 265 miles an hour naked. No fairing whatsoever.
Yeah, explain. He's wearing clothes, but the bike's got no fairing. Yes.
No fairing at all. His body against the wind. Let me tell you, that's a bad son of a bitch.
Yeah. That's like hanging onto something in a tornado. That's what that is. Right.
At Maxton one time, I timed and a bird flew right into a rider at 240 miles an hour in the lights and hitting. Luckily, he was a big, strong guy and hung on. And one hand came off and feathers went everywhere. And I about shit in the tower because he's dead in front of me. And I go, bird hit, bird hit, bird hit. And I sent the ambulance down there. I stopped the whole race. It scared the shit out of me. He goes, "What the hell happened?" When he got to the end, he didn't know what happened.
Well, the energy of a situation like that. I mean, it's like getting hit with a 45 bullet standing still.
That's what I would think.
He had a bruise the size of a baseball on his bicep.
I forgot about that. Thank you, David. That was David, right?
Yeah.
That's just, it's like, he was talking about, I was watching a video talking about burst containment on turbines. And, when a turbine wheel actually fails, they say that it explodes with like the force of a dozen 45 ACPs being fired at the same time.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So, imagine having a handgun that was 12 barrels chambered in 45 ACP and firing that damn thing, and to hit a bird at 200 plus mile an hour on your body somewhere. I mean, that's gotta be, dude.
He's lucky. It could have killed him.
Oh, it could have killed him. If it hits in the wrong spot, it breaks a neck,
Or it just knocks him off the bike. Because remember what the physics says, he's the turbine wheel. The rider is the turbine wheel, not the housing, if you follow my story here. So the physics are on the side of the rider as it encounters something like that. But still, the mass of the bird is, there's no acceleration on the bird. So the physics are slightly different. But nevertheless, if it catches you in the wrong spot and knocks you off, you're rolling down the pavement at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Even MotoGP guys don't do that. Yep.
Oh, positively.
I saw a guy on a snowmobile at just over 100 miles an hour hit a deer.
Ooh. Damn.
I saw a guy carve through a deer in the snowmobile going maybe 65.
He didn't get a scratch on him. He got just enough time to duck his head down, and he was going so fast that the deer actually physically exploded.
Yeah. That's what I mean about the physics of it.
Yeah. I saw the exact same thing happen, Mark, up in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, when I was a kid, like a freshman in high school or something. I don't know who's making all the noises in the background.
Who's got the devil dog? Who's devil dogs? Like,
I thought maybe somebody was just hungry.
No, I saw somebody plow through a deer in a snowmobile. I saw a guy in front of me plow through a deer in a snowmobile, and he got knocked off. He didn't get a chance to put his head down. His helmet was full of guts and I thought it may be his blood or something, but like the guts all ran up in his helmet and stuff. It was nasty, but he busted a deer right in half. It was disgusting. And at first I'm like, he slid a long ways on this icy road. It was a straight road. He didn't hit anything else. The sled and him separated, but neither of them hit anything. They just slid perfectly straight and slowed down. God, it seemed like a quarter of a mile they went. But I remember getting this guy's helmet off, and it was all crowded up with just deer parts. And just disgusting. God, it was like gag a maggot gross. But anyway, move on from that.
And on that note,
70 miles an hour. Yeah.
And on that note, we're an hour and a half in now.
Yeah.
Right. We need to get going. Actually, do we? I got to be on the road early in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I just about sobered up.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much did.
I thought you were staying at home going nowhere for the next several days, Scott.
No, I got to go back to work on another car or emergency call. So going somewhere, Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, good.
He wishes.
Leaving on a jet plane.
So anyway, that's all I got. Evans, you want to take us out? Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. It's been good.
Yep. Good times.
Everybody have a good night.
Everybody.
Good night.
Evening, gentlemen.
Night.
Do you want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com and click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. And remember, don't forget to have your host spayed or neutered.